Good evening and welcome back to my channel. So we have gotten as far as putting the front hull onto the back half. As you can see, there are some fairly large gaps between the two, but that's easily fixed. And matter of fact, that's actually the purpose of what I'm about to go into it in this video, is just what I do to go ahead and fill them. So you can see here we have, I use putty, and I imagine that there's better options to use, but this is the stuff I use once I can find out where I had it, because I just had it in my hand. You ever put something down that's like right in front of you, and then you can't find it? But it's spot glazing putty. It's Bondo. It's the typical stuff you use for car stuff. I mean, seriously, I just had it in my hand. Oh well. But that's my final layer. Okay. So the Bondo is what I use as a final layer for when I sand and then give me the surface that I'm looking for, that I will eventually go down and I will paint. So, layer it up and then I'll paint it, or layer it up, sand it, layer it up and sand it. So I'm in the process of doing that now. I've sanded this twice to get a smooth surface, and that's, a lot of it is because I've got, an uneven join here with the green stuff. It's simpler, easier, better. It gives me a better finish if I just go ahead and layer this up with the Bondo and then sand it. So this is currently drying, but it's about ready to move on to the last stage. So, but to layer that in these gaps, Bondo isn't really the best option for that. So you can see what I do is I do green stuff. So I'm actually going to do that with this side here. Let's see if I can actually set that right there. And so you can see where it's been glued up. I'm going to try to do this without my glasses, or in front of the camera here. So this is going to be a little bit interesting, but let's see what I can do. So what I do is I've mixed up some green stuff, and I usually mix it up in about this quantity. So I'll end up making, probably about a pea size, and that's what I work with, in just steps and stages. So what I will do is I will start here, because what I'm looking for is this joint here, and I did this piece when I joined this together, so that's about where I want it, but I have that fairly large gap there, and that fairly large gap there, and then all this. So let's see if I can get this to sit up there. There we go. That's good. So what I'll do is I will take this, and then I'll just roll off a little piece. And I really am looking for roughly that, right? So I'm looking at the gap and how much is sticking in. Now you can see I've got a lot of this gap is actually filled with green stuff, so I don't need much at all. So I'm going to start here. Yeah, this is going to be entertaining. So please find humor in this, because it is. So there, and then I just stick that in. Now this looks like one whole panel, so this should have been one uniform panel. So that's what I'm going for, and I use this tool. There are two. I have several of these tools, but I use two for the most part. I use this tool here. It's flat and pointed, and you can see that about once every couple of days I scrape off any leftover green stuff. But it's flat-ish and pointed, so I can get into little tiny details. And this one is flat in that way. And then this is the other one. I use this and this. So this works on the larger surfaces. So these two tools here are my two primary tools when I work things. So what I will also do is you can see this is actually my paint water, but to keep green stuff from sticking to your tool, use water. You can use, and actually it's recommended to use petrol jelly. You know, petroleum gelling is actually the best for getting a nice, smooth, flat finish on this stuff. But then you have to clean it off and get all that grease off the thing when you're done, and you know that's just a pain in my backside. So I tend to just use water, because working in the amount of space that I'm working with, water is just fine. So there. Now all I'm doing here, and you can see what I'm doing is I'm scraping along the surface to try and get it down. I want to not have the same problem I had here, where it goes up over the edge. I want to get it down in, because I would rather use the filler to fill the spaces rather than have to build up and sand off. It's just, you know, easier and less of a pain. So as you can see, what I'm doing is I'm just using my tool to reform the contours of the space I'm working on. And, you know, I am no sculptor, and I'm sure there are people, Crow, who are better at this kind of thing than I am. And I also try to smooth this out to feather those edges, again, just to make life easier. So you can see I've done that. And now I'm coming here and I'm just scraping that down and trying to make sure that I've got a nice, good layer there. All right. So now there I have that piece. And I'm going to come up here to the other edge. And what I'm going to try to do here, when I come around to this side, is you see how I've got this layered in here. Now I'm going to have to somehow work underneath this hinge, but it's not going to be that, you know, shouldn't be that difficult. I just need to pay attention. So again, I'll just tap this in here. Now you will find sometimes that the green stuff doesn't want to stick. Like, see how I'm tapping that in? It's just popping up. If you want to encourage it to stick, give it a touch of CA. Just put a little dab of CA on a toothpick, and then touch that. You know what? I will do that. I'm actually going to do that right now because I'm having exactly that problem. So here, do what I usually do. Take CA. And actually, that's how I work with CA, is I put a little bit of dab on that palette. Grab a cocktail stick. And put a little bit of that there. Little dab there. Just a little dab of where I want to make sure it sticks. And I'm just looking for a little dab. Then I can take this and let's reshape this. All right, breathe. Breathing is a little challenging sometimes for me. So I put that in there and I'm just tapping it. So there, now it should stick. And then that just gives it that little bit of extra sticky. I'm going to cut that off right there. So that goes underneath there. And then I'm going to work my way back. And again, I'm going to work down along here because I'm looking to, again, maintain what we see, maintain the details here as much as I can. And let's see if I can get that to go here at the angles that I want. So there we go. See, this is a real subtle detail. See how soft that is? I will probably come back as I'm rescribing and scribe that in. So now, and all I do here is just tap this in. And all I'm doing is just pressing it in. And then once I've got it pretty much in where I want it, and I'm really only paying attention, the part that matters to me really is that right there, is that little edge there. And once I get here, then I'm just going to scrape. And I'm pressing in at the same time I'm scraping off. All right, now you see how that here, that's kind of pulled up right there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press that in again and see if it'll stick. It should. There we go. And there we go. And then I'm going to come back up because I don't, if I push too far down this way, then I'm going to undo all that stuff that I just did there. And then I'm just going to go ahead and slice that right off. So now what I've done here is I've sealed up the seam and I've filled in that gap. This will contract a little because green stuff will, but it doesn't contract anywhere near as much as the as filler will, right? So if I were to use filler, it would take forever. Filler would just, you know, I'd fill it, then it would contract, and then it would leave a gap, and then I'd have to go back and back and back and back and back. This way, I have a nice basis to work from. Now, the other thing I can do is I can take my finger and I can just rub over it to kind of push that down in. I'm using the fact that my finger, you know, it's not flat, so it's going to kind of shove that down in there, and that will leave a very, very subtle channel for the filler to go into, rather than, you know, it being perfectly flat, and not necessarily trusting where the rest of the stuff is. So here, now you can see a very large gap there. And again, you know, this is what I'm doing. You know, I'm filling in these gaps, tucking those in. Now, this particular gap here, you know, up here, these aren't that big a deal. For the most part, they're in a place that isn't seen. So, you know, do I need to do this? No, probably not. Do I need to do this? Yes, because, you know, it's me. It's a detail that would drive me absolutely out of my gourd otherwise. Now this here is dried green stuff from when I put the front and back on, so I can trim that off there. So then I take this and tuck this bad boy up in here. Come on, get in there. Thank you. And sometimes you'll see it stick to your tool, at which point you want to make a point to get it butt again. And so then all I'm doing is cover this up. So because this is at this corner, it's probably not going to be much seen. And you can hide a lot of this with your painting and your shading. But for me, I know it's here and I can make this better, and it takes 2 minutes to spend the time and do that. And I will come back. That was big enough. That hole was big enough that I wanted green stuff in it. The rest of this, I'll green stuff that one too. You know, if it's just a crack, you really can just get away with filler. But this one, you know, these holes here, they're just big enough that it'll be a little bit of a pain. So with it's this process right now that I'm doing. This is the same process I use covering across the whole model. So everywhere these big gaps are, you know, so one of the big complaints, right, that I pointed out when I unboxed this the first time, and what a lot of people who, by the way, thank you very much for the votes of confidence and the feedback I've gotten on these videos. I appreciate it. But something I've gotten in direct messages, as well as, you know, some of the messages on the YinzTube videos themselves, is, you know, the gaps. And the gaps do not have to be something that is daunting. They're big, but there are ways to make that work. So y'all saw the gaps that were here, right? There was a big giant square right here. It's mostly gone. I'm gonna have to put one more layer of cover there, but for the most part, it's gone. And then with this here, just make sure that's all flat there, and there we go. That's the gappage, and that's good to go. So I've filled the gaps, and that is the majority of what this video is about. I also did want to, this is the flight stand mount. So I'd mentioned this before, that I was going to make a flight stand mount. So there's my flight stand, right? So there's the flight stand. But I'm going to make a flight stand mount where I actually affix this to the flight stand. And this is made from 2 layers of 3mm Sintra. Let's see, it would be nice to actually get this thing in video. You can see how thick that is. With lots and lots of green stuff affixing to these mounts. And these are the mounts that come with the kit. Okay, so these mounts come with the kit. And they are for the bottom ramp if you're going to put the ramp in the, in the flight position. So that's where you would mount them on the actual ramp. But since I'm going to make this one with the ones with it down, I took those pieces and did this. So all I did was now I did have to bend this just a little bit because of the curve of the bottom. But then this will just slot right in there. And then with this affixed there, and this, by the way, is the rough center of gravity. And let me see if I can do that. Actually, you know what? I took a picture. I'll put the picture here. So that's a picture of this thing up on the flight stand. So, and the way I made this was quite literally, I put this piece down right here, and then put little globs of green stuff at each of these feet and put them in and slotted them in. So the pieces here fit very snug, so I won't even have to put any magnets or anything in there. Those will actually hold it quite well. But that's that. That is the other piece of where I've gotten so far. So that's how this can be made. This was 20 minutes of carving and cutting and shaping, and about 2 minutes with a heat gun. And now I have that. So I don't really need to put a whole lot of detail underneath here because that will be sitting on top of the flight stand. I might put a little bit of something here, just a couple of greeblies for the grins. And then that will just sit on the flight stand itself. It'll be permanently mounted. That'll be that. Which means my next steps, the next phase I have to go through is finishing all this. I mentioned I may detail the interior, or at least some of it a little bit. One quick and easy way to do this, to cover up all this stuff, is to just take also thin Sintra, which this is little 1mm sheets of it, and put little, see these ribs? Put ribs just at various points and have them cover those spots. And then that way you have surface detail covering your, the internal seams, if you care. So anyway, that is where we are right now with the Aliens Dropship. Again, thank you for following along. I hope you find this entertaining. I see that this video has gotten a tad long, so I'm going to stop now. Thank you for your time, and please share yours if you're working on yours, or let me know how yours comes out as you're, if this helps you out. I will be back next time. Talk to you soon. Thank you very much.